Hello and welcome to the first episode of FurStrology on YouTube. I'm Rodney, but you can call me Fur. I'll always refer to myself as Fur. Fur's a fairy from another planet, and that's me. So hello. And today I'm going to talk about Saturn. And Saturn is in Aquarius at the moment. Now, Saturn is the planet that rules where we have to deal with reality. It's the planet that sets all the difficult lessons. It's the hard taskmaster planet of the zodiac, of the solar system. And it deals with physical reality and the lessons we have to learn here on Earth. So when we all incarnated on Earth, we set the different planets to govern destiny. So you may know that the sun rules the sense of identity, where we shine. The moon rules our emotions, what we feel inside. Mercury rules our mind and our communication abilities and our intellectual abilities. Venus rules what we find beautiful and who we love and where we charm and where we enchant. Mars rules where we take action and where we're aggressive and where we're sexual. Jupiter rules where we expand and where things are easy and lucky for us and where we are idealistic and have faith in things. But Saturn rules where we struggle and we have limitations and where we have to learn our hardest lessons. So Saturn and Jupiter are sort of related. One is Jupiter is the happy, lucky, expanding planet where everything's good and easy for us. But Saturn is the planet where things are difficult and we contract and we're limited and we have to struggle. So wherever Saturn comes around in your chart of one of the 12 signs depends on how you handle adversity, where your toughest lessons are, and also where you have innate ability to build and create that's peculiar to you. It's also slightly related to the planet or the comet, which we call Chiron. Chiron is about healing and teaching, and it's connected to where our greatest healing gifts are. It's sort of right next door to Saturn, but Saturn's really the tough planet of pure difficult lessons and where we have to struggle and where we literally have to struggle the hardest to achieve our material goals on Earth. And when Saturn comes around and interacts with your chart, it's when you have a really tough time and you've got to learn a really tough lesson. So for the world at the moment, Saturn is in Aquarius. So Saturn went into Aquarius last year, just at the beginning of lockdown. And what it did, so it came along and said, I'm going to make it really difficult here and you're all going to have to learn really hard lessons. You're all going to have to rebuild the way you've structured your lives, Saturn, and you're going to have to rebuild in this particular area. And Saturn also takes 2.5 years in a sign. So they often say Saturn is a malefic, which means it's a difficult, nasty planet that makes us all suffer and give us hard lessons. Ooh, I just hit the camera. But it's not really a malefic. It just means that it's a planet where we have to struggle with adversity and learning a difficult lesson of how we live on the world and how we function in the world and how we can remake it and rebuild it to fit what we actually want, what our actual path and our mission is as individual souls. But it can be difficult. So Saturn also represents parents. It represents all things to do with authority and tradition. It would rule like priests and the ATO and governments and armies and police and your parents and any authority that you have to obey. So Saturn is classically, it also rules Capricorns. So Saturn is actually the planet that rules all Capricorns. And it's about structure. It's about working hard. It's about fulfilling all your obligations as a member of society, not rocking the boat. It's about money and economics and structure. It's about the structure of the life we create, the structure of society, and the structures which we have to follow to live in the world. So it may not surprise you that when Saturn went into Aquarius, it made everything to do with Aquarius and all those areas of Aquarius a lesson that we all have to learn. And what's Aquarius about? Aquarius is about freedom. So freedom and community and progressive ideas and how we function as a collective and how we progress. So Aquarius is a very progressive sign, but Saturn is a conservative building sign. So when they get together, it's a bit of a clash. It's like the hippie punk versus the policeman, so, or the judge, or your very strict parents. So Saturn in Aquarius is literally, there's a struggle between building where we're authentically free. So when Saturn went into Aquarius last year, guess when it went in? At the beginning of lockdown. So literally we were all, our freedom, Aquarius, our ability to function in society and be free and be authentic to ourselves and just get on and do what we liked, which is very Aquarian, was basically limited by Saturn. Saturn came along and said, oh no, you're not allowed to be free anymore. Everything you thought you had built there, everything you thought you had structured there according to the freedom of society, the freedom to move and be out in the world and go to cafes and pubs and go to work and go to school and go on holidays and basically be free out in society. Saturn came along and said, oh no, you're going to have to figure out this all completely again. So I'm going to take it away from you and then you're going to have to build something new. So that's exactly what happened. That actual week when we all looked back and said, my God, the world has completely changed. A week ago, we were all free. Now we're not. We're all kind of basically under house arrest. That's when Saturn went into Aquarius. And it went out, it only went in for a little while and then it came out again. So that was the false dawn of, this is an example of how it works. That's the false dawn of, we all went into our houses and then we all came out again because Saturn went out of Aquarius back into Capricorn. So what happens also is that the planets move back and forth. They go through different signs. The outer planets, that's anything from Mars on all the way to the end of the solar system. So that's Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. They all sometimes appear to go backwards because we're accelerating past them at certain points in the Earth's orbit around the sun, and they seem to suddenly go backwards. They're not actually going backwards, but they appear to go backwards. So that's called apparent retrograde motion, which is a fancy way of saying that planet looks like it's going backwards. But it's not. That's why it's only apparent. It's not actual retrograde motion. But when planets go backwards, we have to go over the old territory again. So Saturn went into Aquarius last year at the beginning of lockdown, and then it just came out again. It went back into Capricorn. Now, we'd got used to it in Capricorn. Everything in Capricorn that we were having to deal with has everything to do with banking and the economic collapse that had happened at the GFC like 10 years earlier. Because and it was still coming, we were still having issues with it when Saturn was in Aquarius for the last, about 3 years to 6 months ago. So we had all issues with money and economy and everything to do with Saturn was basic, but Saturn was in its own actual happy sign, so it wasn't too bad. But when Saturn went into Aquarius, which is a very different sign, we literally had our freedom taken away. So in Aquarius, what Saturn's telling us to do is we have to try and find a new way to function in society. We have to build a new way of relating that gets past the blocks that Saturn's putting up, and we have to think differently. So particularly in Aquarius, because Aquarius is all about being unconventional and thinking differently and being progressive. One of the things that happened, you may have noticed, was the Black Lives Matter movement. That's a classically Saturn in Aquarius issue. We suddenly have to organize and take action and try and change the structure of society. So structure of society and the way things have been done and the way we thought that, the way that the world had been running up to then, which was literally the most horrible oppression of people of color all around the world. Saturn came along and said, okay, now if you want to build up this, you want to change this, you want to build on this, you want to take action, you want to do some hard work, we're going to have to do the hard work now. But we're going to do it in the realm of Aquarius, which is social progress, being authentic, fighting for rights, and being activists. Like Aquarius literally rules activists. So, and any sort of activism. So Saturn moving into Aquarius at the same time as also bringing the restrictions of COVID, it was all simultaneous. But and part of the Saturn being Aquarius and giving us these very difficult jobs to do, the rebuild in these areas, is we have to learn how to take action. So we're putting ideological principles of Aquarius, social progress, activism, fighting for rights, etc. We're actually building structures that will actually change that. So Saturn comes along and says, no, you're not free, but then it says, yeah, but I want you to be free. It's a very strange planet. But particularly in Aquarius, that's what it's done. You may also have also noticed that for those of you watching in Sydney and also in other places that are still locked down, Saturn goes direct on the 11th of October, which just coincidentally happens to be the day that Sydney lockdown comes sort of slightly limited free for those who are vaccinated. The Sydney people will know what I'm talking about, but generally speaking, because Saturn is going to move forward again on the 11th of October, we are the new paradigm of what it is to be free and function in society, which is not wonderful. It's like, well, now we all have to be vaccinated, and we have to carry around ID. And some people who don't want to be vaccinated, they're still not going to be free, and so it's a very mixed bag. But literally, Saturn is saying you've got to learn the lessons. You've got to accept this is the way it is, and it's not the freedom you knew before, but it's a new sort of modified Saturnian freedom. So there's an element of having to basically obey the law and obey society and obey structures and obey legal systems and obey government and obey things you may not agree with. But Saturn is not done with being in Aquarius. So we've got another 2 years of this, because Saturn, as I said, it takes 2.5 years in the sign. So things are going to be different. Saturn's moving forward again in Aquarius. So it means we've got a little bit of freedom back again, but it's not the freedom we knew before. But what we have to do is organize collectively to keep and taking action to keep modifying that as a collective and a community to keep making those changes. But Saturn is basically making us rebuild. Saturn Aquarius is making us rebuild in those areas of collective responsibility, of activism and ideology. Also, for those people who actually do have Saturn in Aquarius in their chart, what that means is that you're very much a builder in terms of this area. You're a builder of collective consciousness, of authenticity. You're progressive. You may be seen as quite abstract and intellectual. Saturn also indicates where you may have issues, so you may be a little bit too cool and too detached. You may be a little bit arrogant about your ideas. You may think you're superior. Saturn also shows where you may have issues and where you've got the issues of border and ego and issues around you feel very special and empowered in this spot and maybe a little bit too precious about it. And so you're stuck up in this area, and therefore it limits you to see beyond the area. So if you've got Saturn in Aquarius, you may be a little bit too sure of your own ideological systems and a little bit too cold and too abstract, which is all Aquarius. So think of Aquarius and then think of it in a negative way, and that's what Saturn does. So Saturn in any other sign will also take the most negative parts of that sign and make it a problem. Not everyone gets the problem, but people generally do. But we won't talk about Saturn in any other signs today. But just to summarize, remember, Saturn rules limitation. It rules where we have to take hard action, where we have to learn a really difficult lesson, where we have to obey Caesar, we have to obey the law, we have to obey our parents, we have to obey governments, we have to earn a job, so we have to earn a living. We have to work hard, and we have to literally just obey and do what we're told. That's Saturn energy. But Saturn in Aquarius is actually probably the most liberal side of Saturn, where it's basically saying, okay, these are the rules, but you've got an opportunity here to change them as a collective. So as Saturn moves through Aquarius, we're going to have issues around freedom coming up. We're going to have more struggles around collective responsibility, around freedom, about what are our rights. There may be more rebellions or around any sort of social issues that would include COVID. More things around Black Lives Matter, more things about any other issue you could care to mention that may come up. it also is another thing that comes when Saturn's in Aquarius is technological change. So there's been a lot of technologies coming up, anything from the fact that Zoom suddenly came in, and we're completely inundated with phones and technology and apps and everything, but there's going to be more of it. The thing that's come up actually, which you might have noticed going on in the background suddenly recently, is all this obsession with space travel. So that's a new thing that's going to take off. The other thing they're going to actually get organized is technological solutions to climate change. So that's actually reducing our carbon footprints all over the place. And it's getting to the point now where no one can really say, no, we're just going to have coal mines forever and have gasoline cars and pour this shit out all over the place, all the CO2. We're going to have to deal with it. But there'll be technological changes that'll help that. So Saturn is also about instituting technological change at a very deep level of society. So even the National Party in Australia may have to accept the carbon zero by 2050. That's an example. So there's a lot of technology that even something new we haven't thought of yet. We're going to have a lot more artificial intelligence as well, which is a bit scary. But see what happens there. But so Saturn in Aquarius, next we're going to be there in Saturn in Aquarius for another 2 years. And we'll see what happens. And it's going to go retrograde a couple of times. So we're going to maybe feel like we're going back over old territory. So it may go retrograde early next year sometime, and we may all go back into lockdown or something like that. Or we may have another eruption of Black Lives Matter or any other thing you could possibly think of that could come up. That's where, so we have learned something, and we thought we learned the lesson, and we've been there, done that. So we all thought we were in lockdown, and we did that last year, and then we did it again. Because the planets keep moving backwards and forwards. Saturn is going backwards and forwards. So we're going to think, I've learned this lesson before. Why do I have to learn it again? Because the lesson has not been completely learnt. The action has not been taken. And we have to go over, basically it's revision. A planet going retrograde is like revision. Oh my God, I have to learn this again. I didn't quite completely learn the lesson. I did A, B, C, but I didn't do X, Y, Z. So we have to go back and learn it again. So that's our summary of Saturn in Aquarius. I'm going to be looking at various different planets on FurStrology, but welcome to my little YouTube channel, and hopefully I'll see you again soon. Bye.